Good afternoon. My name is Kara Miller. I'm the principal at Southview Elementary, and I am very thankful that the United Way of Delaware County has asked me to read a story, this story right here, that is called As an Oak Tree Grows by C. Brian Karras. And right here is a seal. This seal says Blue Ribbon Selection from the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. So this is from Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, which is a wonderful program that students receive books and are able to read with their families. And again, I want to say thank you to the United Way of Delaware County who help us at Southview, and I'm grateful that I get to read to you all, and I hope you enjoy this wonderful book. If you look at this book, you can look at the cover page. The cover page always has wonderful pictures that draw us in and make us want to read the book. And I also like to do what's called a picture walk. And as I walk through and look at the different pages of the book, I can see what this story will be about. And when I was sharing this story with other students, some kindergarten students, they thought that this book was going to be about a tree that grows. And I thought that that was an excellent prediction. They made a prediction at the very beginning of this story before we even read the book. So we talked about also what the author does. What do you think the author does? The author writes the words and tells us the story. And as you listen to a book, it's kind of like going to the movies. Not only do you get to see beautiful pictures in the picture book here, but you also get to envision things in your mind about how wonderful the story is and what the author was thinking about when they created this story. The next page is the title page. The title page has the title on it again. And then again it talks about the author, G. Brian Karras. On a sunny late summer day, a young boy planted an acorn in the ground. Right here, you can see a tiny little boy right here planting an acorn. All of these trees are around. There is also water back here in the background and a canoe. And then we have a little hut right here. All we see is that we see a lot of green. We don't see much of anything else but trees and animals and green. I wonder how this story is going to end up looking, if we're going to still have all of this green here on our pages. Later that year, an oak tree sprouted from the earth and into the air and the light. Each fall it was shed and its leaves. Each fall it will shed its leaves, and each spring new ones will grow. See the bare trees? All of their leaves are on the ground from falling. And then right here in this corner, there's a little rectangle and it has a year in it, 1775. So in the year 1775, you can see the tree beginning to grow. That is the very beginning of our tree. And they talked about a season called fall. And that's the season that the leaves fall down from our trees and they come to the ground. And as one of my kindergarten students told me, that fall comes right before winter. Because we have 4 seasons here in Indiana, boys and girls. The next year, right here, it says 1800. And you can see that there's a little bit of change that has occurred on this page. The boy grew up and moved away. Farmers now lived here. They cleared the hillsides where forests once stood. The wood was used for building and to burn in fireplaces. But the oak tree was left standing. See the oak tree right here in the spine of the book? Has beautiful green leaves on it, so we know it's no longer fall. But now look, in 1825, The oak tree had room to spread wide and grew upward and outward. Sometimes snow was very heavy and a branch would break off. Here we have snow on the ground. We have other houses that are forming around. You can see ice on the water now. And then you see that the leaves are gone and the snow is there. As they said, the snow is very heavy and a branch broke off the tree. But the tree still stood and it was still growing. Look at these little prints right here. I wonder what those prints could be from. They look like tiny footprints. Now it's 1850. As the oak tree grew, everyone and everything was on the move. Children grew, some stayed to work on the farms, and others left to work in factories. Ships came and went. Large engines rumbled along steel rails. Birds perched in the oak tree to rest from long migrations. Some stayed and made new homes, and others flew on. More people arrived and built new houses and buildings. Look at how it's growing in 1850. Look at that oak tree. It's getting bigger and bigger and stronger. And even though that branch fell on the page before, you can hardly tell with the leaves covering it up. And of course, that happened in 1825, and now it's 1850. One of the students I was reading this book to said, they keep talking about different years. It's like a number line. So they are telling us what happens throughout the years, the story of this beautiful oak tree. Some years, little rain fell. Hills and fields were dry, where trees had once stood and shaded the ground from the sun's rays. The oak tree's roots reached far underground for water as its leaves wilted. So when there's not much rain, the poor leaves wilt. They turn brown because they don't receive enough water, because this is such a big oak tree that the roots are way down under the ground and can't get enough water. So they need rain so that they can feed the tree. But the farmers were very smart, and they conserved some of the water, what little they had, for their thirsty livestock until the rain fell again. So their livestock were the animals that they cared for and that they had on their farm. They had to save the water that they did have to feed their live animals. And our big oak tree is tough. It's holding strong, even though some of its leaves are wilting. And that was in 1875. Look at all the lights. We didn't see these lights before. You can see lights shining through the tree and on the sides of the tree. There are so many lights, like a city. Electricity came through wires that were strung over hills and through valleys. It powered street lamps and homes. The land twinkled with lights as stars faded in the night sky. And this was in the 1900s. 1900. We're keep going up in the years. In 1925, the oak tree grew slowly and steadily, while all around it life sped by. People rode in cars to go to work and visit friends and to go shopping, or just to take a drive. So now they're talking about cars in 1925. Earlier on, you were able to see that they had horse and carts, horse and buggies. So we're moving right along. They used to have just these horses that they were riding on. Now they talk about cars. In 1950, soon the air was filled with jet conrails and radio waves and sound waves of beeping cars, barking dogs, zooming motorboats, and whistling trains and music. Do any of you ever go outside and hear music when the cars drive by? Or on a nice warm day, you have your windows open and you hear the birds chirping and the trains going by. In 1975, the oak tree is 200 years old now. It has shed its leaves and grown new ones every year. Animals, birds, and insects have made homes in its folds, in its holes, and in its branches. And lots of kids have played underneath these trees and built steps to make forts. This tree has come home to a lot of people and a lot of animals. 200 years old. Can you believe that? It's now the year 2000. The oak tree, with its strong roots, trunk, and limbs, have survived many storms over its lifetime. Now a fog rolls in, and a big storm is on its way. You can tell that it's blowing, it's windy, the leaves are falling. You see hair blowing in the wind, and there's even a school bus. So everyone's getting ready to get to a safe spot because the storm is powerful and the oak tree is split in two. It does not survive this storm. See the lightning? The lightning went right down the middle of the tree, right in the middle, and split it right in half. This tree, which is 200 years old, was struck by lightning. People come to look where the great oak tree once stood. The tree is cut into pieces to be used for furniture, firewood, and mulch. Mulch is that stuff that we put around our trees sometimes, or in our flower gardens in our front. But look at that big, big stump. When the tree was struck by lightning, they had to cut it down. And look at that big tree stump. That's what's left over from that big oak tree. And on the next page, I have a bigger picture to show you of this tree stump. Watch. Wow. Look how big that tree stump is. Do you see all those rings around the tree stump? These rings are like birthday candles. If you count those rings, you'll be able to count 200, because that's how old this tree was. 200 years old. And then we have a little surprise that's right next to this stump. Let me tell you what it is in a minute. A new day dawns. Once again, the ground is warm and welcoming as a new oak tree grows. Look right there. A new oak tree is getting ready to start. I wonder if it will get to be 200 years old. That tree had a lot of wonderful things going on, and a lot of people visited that tree. So if you ever walk by and see a tree stump, count the rings to see how old the tree was. And then try to imagine what all that tree pictured and has been able to see throughout its life. And then always know there are new trees to be planted to grow. And sometimes books have really cool facts that you can read. And this gives you some really cool facts about oak trees. It tells you that there are many different types of oak trees. There's white oak, the kind in this book, that can live to be several hundred years old. It says by counting the rings on the stump of a cut tree, you can tell how old it was. 1 year for each ring. Oak trees can produce acorns when they are as young as 10 years old. The hard-shelled acorn contains the seed from which a new tree grows. And when we went back to the very beginning of the story, that's what the little boy planted, was an acorn that grew up into that big, big oak tree that ended up being 200 years old right here. Oak trees can grow to be 100 feet tall and wide. Oaks are good shade trees, and acorns are an important food source for animals and insects and people too. The wood from an oak tree is very strong and has many uses. for ships, houses, and furniture, and often made from oak, all of those things. So this was the story of an oak tree that grew. And you can see why on the cover of this book that we see the side that has snow and no leaves for winter, and the side with leaves and a young man mowing the lawn with his animals and cars for summer, and to share with us more about how this tree went through all kinds of seasons each year. It went through lots and lots of seasons. I hope you enjoyed this book, As an Oak Tree Grows by C. Brian Karras. And thank you, Dolly Parton and the Imagination Library for providing books to our children, and thank you to the United Way for providing these books through the Dolly Parton Imagination Library as well. I hope all of you enjoyed this book and all of the other books that you get to enjoy. Thank you for having me.